Hey, I'm Finn, and today I wanted to talk about the new Star Wars trilogy, the sequel trilogy, consisting of The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker. Now that it's been a year since the release of The Rise of Skywalker, I kind of just wanted to take a really big deep dive into everything that's happened in the sequel trilogy, what impression this leaves on the fans, what impression this leaves on the Star Wars universe as a whole, and just my thoughts on everything that happened in it and how it will affect Star Wars going forward. So I started writing the script for this, and as I started writing, I just got more and more and more, and now I have my biggest script yet at 11 pages, 12 point Times New Roman. And this was a huge undertaking for me. I had to stop doing a lot of what else I was working on just to get this video done, a lot of editing too, so please leave a like and subscribe. I know I hate it when other people do that, but I just had to get that out of the way. Now, I really feel like the best way to sort of describe the whole sequel trilogy is just wasted potential. There are some really beautiful scenes and amazing things that happen in the sequel trilogy, and The Force Awakens left so much for them to explore and so many concepts to work with that it really sucks to see it fall apart and fall on its face. I don't want to come across as reviewing this as a hater of the sequels, but just as a fan of the originals and the prequels. I know the prequels have mistakes. I'm not saying these are necessarily better. I'm just saying that I prefer them, and you can prefer what you want. If you enjoy the sequels, good on you, more power to you. I'm honestly envious. I wish I could enjoy these, but it's just not for me. And just the sequels have these running issues of either ruining the mood.
What the fuck?
Having decisions that don't really make sense.
I'm the spy. What?
Or when they just straight up change their mind and switch out the concept with what they were doing entirely.
Sam,
They were nobody.
they were filthy junk traders who sold you off for drinking money.
This video is really big, so I'm gonna have to divide it into a bunch of different parts. So right now, just go ahead and skip to the timestamp that you would like to focus on, or just watch through the whole video to get all my thoughts and opinions. Thanks, and let's just get into it. This trilogy is littered with character issues, from inconsistencies to just poorly written characters in general, and if I wanted to make a list of all of these, we would have a video longer than the runtime of the fucking Phantom Menace. So instead, I'll just be focusing on 5 characters in particular. I'm gonna be focusing on Rey, Ben, Finn, Luke, and Hux, because I feel like those 5 kind of had the most opportunity for their characters, and they went the most south. First and most controversial is gonna be Rey. There's always the never-ending argument of if she's a Mary Sue or not, which she is, but so are Luke and Anakin in their movies. I mean, seriously, Anakin at like 7 years old flies a ship into a blockade and blows up the entire fleet. Anakin was the biggest Mary Sue of the Star Wars franchise. So yeah, Mary Sues are not a new concept to this universe, and I also sort of dislike the term Mary Sue in general, but oh well, I'm just gonna move on from it. And Rey's character is a victim of narrative circumstance. The reason I say this is because Rey almost never does anything. Things just happen to Rey, and she reacts to them. There's only really one instance in each movie that she actually takes agency and does something for herself. In The Force Awakens, you had the bit where she breaks free by mind tricking the guard. In The Last Jedi, you had the... Well, you had... Oh, wait. It was Morphe because it was just going to see Kylo. And then in the third one, it was also just going to fight Kylo. Those are really the only 3 moments that she actually has agency of her own and does something as a character without being guided to it. In fact, if you look at the wiki, the only time you're going to see a verb followed by Rey's name is if she's finding something someone else told her to go get or that was left for her. I really hate the bullshit narrative that anyone who doesn't like Rey's character is misogynist or sexist, because it's not a critical analysis. It's not letting people look into these movies as something more than just what's on screen at that very second. It's kind of shutting down the room for creative interpretation and creative thought. And that's really bad, especially when... Why is it sexist to call out a character that's not a character? Rey is a passenger to her own trilogy, an afterthought, a plot device that was put in so that the rest of the story can be understood and seen. The big issue with Rey is that she's not a character. She's just a plot device to be used and passed around like that goddamn knife in episode 9. And in that same way, Finn is the exact same, but opposite. Because whereas Rey is someone who doesn't matter, only the plot around her matters, Finn is someone that really does matter, but the plot doesn't give a shit about him. He is a genuinely cool character in a backstory that's intriguing, one that we care about, one that we want to see him grow and develop more into. But no, they don't, and most of the time, Finn is just a puppy to scream Rey's name when we forget what we're supposed to be caring about on the screen.
Ray, I never told you Ray. Ray! Ray, come on!
Finn is one of my favorite Star Wars characters ever, and the fact that he's kicked to the sidelines faster than, I don't know, faster than the Brits castrated Turning after they found out he was gay? Faster than Nintendo stock fell after the release of the Wii U? Faster than Tucker Carlson lasts in bed? Faster than JJ and Benji vanished after the pedo allegations? Faster than, okay, never mind, you get it. That just upsets me. It's a huge waste of a character. Instead of seeing Finn grow into himself and helping free other stormtroopers from the confines that they've been set to by the circumstances of their birth, he does nothing. The only time we ever see him interact with other stormtroopers that's not blowing their heads off is the ones that already rebelled and already left. Why couldn't we see Finn leading the charge of a group of actual stormtroopers that changed their mind? Like, I know that there's people in the First Order that want to betray. I mean, we've seen plenty of them, but we've never seen one actually do it other than Finn. Imagine if instead in The Last Jedi, instead of the Holdo maneuver, which I'll get into later, Finn managed to escape by calling the stormtroopers to arms, and by having them unite with him, and then they all teamed up against Phasma, or at least half and half, so then the battle was between more stormtroopers versus other stormtroopers. It would have been really cool and a satisfying resolve of this arc of a stormtrooper breaking free from their circumstances of their birth. But instead we get this. And this is a bit more ranty, but no way did Finn wear that jacket for all of those movies, take the nickname Poe gave him, and have this scene
Oh no. Oh, Dameron, you're alive? Buddy, so are you. What happened to you? What happened? I got thrown.
without them turning out lovers. I'm sorry, I said it, I'm not ashamed to admit it. I love them. The Storm Pilot, I believe that's the ship name, is an amazing ship. Storm Pilot is an amazing ship. And Oscar Isaac and John Boyega both said that they supported it and they wanted to see it happen. But no, we get this. So yeah, just more wasted potential, and not even a fully realized character by the end of it. Just another... just a character to yell Rey. Just always yelling Rey. Now that we've got our protagonists out of the way, let's look at the opposite, Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren is a very interesting character who I've already made an entire video on that will get way deeper and more in depth than what I'm about to get into here. But the point is, he should have been a failed redemption arc. One of the good things about The Last Jedi was the decision to keep Kylo as bad, show that not everybody can be redeemed and sometimes there is a point that you have to let people go. But then J.J. Abrams took over and said, no, I've got merch to sell. I mean, seriously, I really do like everything The Last Jedi sets up and a lot of the things they do, but then it's just undercut by The Rise of Skywalker literally undoing all of it. He has the most undeserved redemption arc I've ever seen in my life because he wasn't supposed to have a redemption arc. All that he does in the first two movies is solidify this evilness by killing Han and then attempting to kill his mom in the second one. Which begs the question, why does he suddenly care about his mom in The Rise of Skywalker? And it doesn't just bother me that Kylo's wasn't narratively good, it also shouldn't be narratively possible or possible at all, which I'll get into in the plot hole section. And yeah, about that Leia thing, why does no one in the series actually just fucking die? C-3PO? Nope. Leia? Psych. Rey? Not actually. Chewbacca? Nope. And nope. I'm gonna stop here before I just keep this rant going, and I'll just move on. And really, why did Kylo decide to change sides? It wasn't an emotional battle like Vader and Luke had, with lots of dialogue filling in and sort of being the main centerpiece. And he already talked to both Han and Carrie Fisher, God bless. But why is it different now? Why is Leia's voice now calling out to him working, but it wasn't earlier? Why is he going from fine with murdering her to feeling like a bad boy? I don't understand. And you can't really get into Kylo without his sort of foil, Hux, because I honestly thought that Hux and Kylo were like siblings because they set up that dynamic really well. That's one of the dynamics I actually love in the new trilogy, just between Kylo and Hux. I think it's so sibling-like and sweet, even if it's like this most of the time.
Supreme Leader, don't get distracted. Our goal.
But Hux doesn't really matter. He's just a whiny brat whose redemption is even less reserved than Kylo, if you can even call it a redemption. And it's just like, this is really? I mean, the first two movies were spent establishing that you are loyal to a fault to the First Order, and that you are the most loyal, even more so than Kylo. And now suddenly you're just gonna do this? It doesn't really make sense. And I'll be honest, I was rooting for Hux. I wanted to see Hux redeemed because there's a lot of cute fan art. I'm not gonna lie. I thought it would have been cool to see a character like that be redeemed and change sides, and then maybe he could have been a forefront leader in the, rebellion as one of the most practiced and experienced generals of the First Order. But yeah, of course then they had to kill Hux, because if J.J. Abrams doesn't currently have a character running out on a fetch quest, he doesn't know what to do with them. And there's no way we can talk about anyone else's arcs until we get into Luke. Luke. I understand The Last Jedi was a movie about failure, but it was still fresh in our minds that Luke is the hero we left off with. The Force Awakens really cemented this with how he was still feared and remembered as this legendary hero. Maybe if The Force Awakens had done a better job at setting him up, we would have liked his appearance more. And also if they didn't undercut this emotional scene with throwing it over his shoulder.
What the fuck?
Imagine instead of Luke tossing the lightsaber behind his shoulder, he just gently drops it to the ground, and then we get a shot of Rey seeing this happen from like sort of the ground angle with the lightsaber in view, and it changes focus on that when Rey walks away. This kind of shows, hey, I'm done, man. I'm retired. Without being like, hoo-hoo, I need you to laugh. Because Rian Johnson, when I saw this in theaters, it told me I shouldn't care about your movie. It told me that you would rather sell all of your good emotional moments for cheap laughs, which is not the impression you want to give your audience. And Hermit Luke could have worked. I actually do like a lot of the scenes with Hermit Luke and the idea that he was somehow responsible for Ben, but it doesn't really work with Luke's character because all that he was in the end of Return of the Jedi was someone who sees the good in people no matter what. He was someone that would always try to redeem you, and he would not even fight Vader for half their battle because he still saw the good in him. And now he's just going to start chopping up Kylo? I mean, maybe they should have twisted the narrative in a bit more of a Luke not igniting his lightsaber kind of way. Maybe just Kylo starts getting dark side influence from somewhere else or whatever. Or if you want to keep this narrative, then establish that Luke is a bad guy. Well, I should rephrase. Not a bad guy, just that he was partially responsible for Kylo Ren. Let Leia point out this in the first movie. Let there be some sort of hint that the galaxy is angry at Luke at that time. And then we can see a sort of redemption arc for him, instead of just this weird flat line. And yeah, I guess that's pretty much all I have for the characters. There's so much more I could get into, but I'm not trying to make a video that lasts like the same amount of time as one of these movies. I'm sorry. And pretty much a lot of the biggest character grievances comes from the story's biggest problem, a lack of commitment. Because there was no roadmap, there's no commitment to ideas. If you think about the prequels, even though they were pretty bad at times, they stuck with their guns to the very end. They were loyal to what they wanted to tell to a fault. And it ends up with some pretty cool moments. When fans walked out of The Last Jedi and gave it negative reviews, J.J. Abrams rushed to undo it and get rid of any concept that was introduced or anything that was solidified. And this lack of commitment caused this sort of, I want to say, narrative whiplash, where you go from one thing to the exact opposite in a few seconds. And the biggest examples of this are Rey's lineage, Ben's redemption arc, any character death, the story villain, and the sort of idea that the Jedi are dead and everyone needs to start moving on. And of course, the issue of Rey's lineage is never going to stop being a plot hole-filled narrative disaster with disconnected writing, confused morals, weird stories, and trying to push two different themes and tones at the exact same time. But the cherry on top is Palpatine. Fucking Palpatine. Why did they bring Palpatine back? The Star Wars movies are about the Skywalkers. At least the original trilogy and the prequels were. And then this was supposed to be a kind of step back, with the only real main Skywalker being Ben Solo. And it was kind of nice just to see everything from the outside and realize that Rey is someone without a family, and that Rey needs to define her own path without this lineage behind her. But then...
You have his power. You're his granddaughter. You are Palpatine.
See, The Force Awakens introduces a concept. Rey is alone. Rey is a scavenger left on a planet by parents who didn't care for her. And The Last Jedi did everything it could to solidify this and make that the most known fact about her character. And then what did The Rise of Skywalker do? It made her one of the most powerful Force users in the galaxy with her connection to Palpatine. Rey is both nobody and someone that she doesn't want to be, and it doesn't work. These two sort of parallel character arcs, if you want to call them that, don't work together because none of them are being fully realized. You can't have your cake and eat it, and you can't have no lineage and the most important one in the goddamn galaxy. If they just committed to the idea that Rey was a no one, I feel like the lessons would have been so much better. You don't have to come from anywhere to be powerful. You don't have to come from anywhere to be you. It's okay if you're just Rey. But then they kind of threw this narrative in the garbage in favor of, oh, you should learn not to be the evil person you are. So yeah, I really loved Rian Johnson's idea of she actually is a no one, and I liked J.J. Abrams' original idea of she's a no one, but then J.J. threw it away because he saw the reviews and needed more fan service. Kylo's arc also suffers a lot of commitment issues, which is strange because, you know, he reaffirms all of his character every single movie. The Force Awakens, he's gonna reaffirm that he's evil by killing Han. The Last Jedi, he's gonna reaffirm his character by both attacking Rey at the end and trying to take over the throne, and B, trying to kill Leia. Oh, and then C, trying to kill Luke. And then, fortunately for our heroes, Rey has the stab of friendship that manages to bring him back from the dark side by the simple virtue of having his guts spilled out.
F is for friends who do stuff together. U is for you and me. N is for anywhere and anytime at all. Down here in the deep blue sea.
It's just an undeserved arc. You could even say it's forced. The narrative that it originally wanted to push, that Kylo was a failed redemption arc and Kylo was someone who truly fell to the dark side, ended up being really good in The Last Jedi, and it was one of my favorite parts of it and one of my favorite parts of The Force Awakens. And for them to just turn their back on this because the reviews weren't coming in too hot was a really bad idea. Maybe they should have waited until they made all of the movies before taking their constructive look at it and trying to change the things that they wanted to do with the story. But I digress. I've already gotten into that, and you can watch that video on the other channel in Zuko vs. Kylo. And now just for some kind of faster examples. They wanted Luke to be sort of the driving force behind Kylo's change, but he's still looked at by everyone as this galactic hero, which doesn't really make much sense. The idea that stormtroopers defect was only explored twice by those who have already defected and made up their minds. And pretty much everything in The Rise of Skywalker, because The Rise of Skywalker is the absolute worst offender. This is because The Last Jedi put it in a position to close a lot of points. But The Last Jedi actually closed a lot of those points, and there was no need to explore them further. Like Kylo's redemption arc, there was no need to continue with that because the redemption arc had ended. There was none. And same thing for Rey being a Palpatine. There was no reason to explore that arc because it had ended with Rey being a nobody. And maybe we should slow down and not get upset at Rian Johnson so fast, because his movies followed the tried and true tested formula of the Star Wars trilogies. The Star Wars trilogies follow a three-step kind of guide. The first movie, the heroes achieve a small victory over the enemy / empire. I mean, come on, it's all the same. And in the second movie, they fail. It ends off with them in a bad position where they're just spirits are low, things aren't looking too good. And then the third movie is the victory. They finally achieve the greatest triumph over the enemy and move on. In A New Hope, you had the death of the Death Star, which was kind of the first victory. In The Empire Strikes Back, you can tell where you lost there. Luke got his arm cut off, learned about Vader, Han is frozen in carbonite, and they barely make it back together. And The Return of the Jedi, of course, is the end where they beat the Empire and kill Palpatine. They actually kill Palpatine. They kill Palpatine. I don't know how he's...
Dark science. Cloning. Secrets only the Sith knew.
And it may seem the prequels don't follow this format, but if you actually look at it a bit closer as far as just the narrative says it, it actually does follow the same formula. The first movie with them beating that blockade. The second movie is a bit more subtle, because despite the fact that it seems like they've pulled a victory by getting all of the clone troopers up and running and getting all those ready, it's not, because if you listen to the musical keys and everything, that is a bad thing. That is a very bad thing for the narrative, for everyone involved. They just don't realize it yet, and it's a failure.
Victory! Victory, you say? Master Obi-Wan, not victory. The shroud of the dark side has fallen. Begun. The Clone War has.
And Revenge of the Sith is the hardest to see them following the formula, but it is a victory from Anakin and from Palpatine. You're supposed to be looking at it from the dark side perspective for that movie, so that's their victory. And Ryan followed this formula. He made the second movie the biggest failure ever in Star Wars, and I freaking loved it. I really did enjoy a lot of The Last Jedi. I loved the themes of failure. I loved the theme of, hey, sometimes we mess up, but we can go back and fix things. But then with The Rise of Skywalker retconning most of these failures out of existence, it doesn't feel the same, and it doesn't have the same weight. I mean, just imagine if the other trilogies did some of the things to reverse these failures like this one did. After The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, Luke would just have his blue lightsaber back. That would just be a thing that happened. In the prequels, Anakin would cut off Count Dooku's head and then heal it, and then Dooku would be on the good guy's side. What I'm saying is embrace failure, embrace the big things like Rey's lineage, embrace the failures like Kylo's redemption arc, or failed redemption arc, and embrace even the little failures like Luke's lightsaber being destroyed. You should embrace these things and let your characters move on and grow from it, not go back on it and act like you never had it happen in the first place. Hey, you want to know what the sequel trilogy does best? They're really good at making their plot an incoherent mess. I would make the fine Swiss cheese joke where, you know, you're like, oh, hardy har, this story has more plot holes than Swiss cheese. But that would be an insult to Swiss cheese. But Star Wars has always had a lot of plot holes. But here's where we're going to get into the differences. There are two types of plot holes: fractures and breaks. The fractures aren't going to really hamper your enjoyment of the movie that much. They just exist as these little plot holes that you're like, wait, but a character said this, but that happened. It's more of just, oh, that's kind of inconsistent unless this plot literally shouldn't happen. That's what a break is. It is when the plot shouldn't be allowed to exist because of these plot holes. But yeah, I just wanted to run through a list of plot holes in other movies that are commonly addressed and kind of say like, hey, that's not so bad compared to what this trilogy brings. Like, here are some of the fractures in the original trilogies. In The Phantom Menace, why does Qui-Gon say Yoda is the Jedi Master who trained him when it was clearly Qui-Gon Jinn? In Attack of the Clones, how the fuck did Jar Jar Binks become a politician? Who did this? And why do you make me watch Clone Wars episodes where he is in a position of power? Nobody should have let this happen. God is dead in the Star Wars universe, and this is proof. In Revenge of the Sith, why did they hide Luke on Vader's home planet and even have him keep the Skywalker name despite what they did for Leia? And in A New Hope, how doesn't Obi-Wan recognize neither C-3PO or R2-D2 or make a comment about that? How did Luke get into Hoth? How did he get in the blockade in Empire Strikes Back? And how come the Force ghosts appear in certain ways except Anakin, who doesn't appear as Vader and just appears as, you know, Anakin? How can Leia remember her mom when Padme died in childbirth? And after you've heard all those, you're probably like, yeah, those are plot holes, but they're not breaks. They're not gonna actually hamper your enjoyment of the story. You're just gonna be like, oh, that was kind of unplanned, and move on. But breaks are things that you'll be like, what I'm seeing on screen is impossible based on the lore that's been put before me. And a lot of people are currently getting to their keyboards and telling me why plot holes aren't harmful to a narrative, and why plot holes are just nitpicking and not letting things really happen. And they're gonna tell me about Alfred Hitchcock's icebox idea. The idea of the icebox scene is where when you're home and taking the chicken out of the freezer, out of the icebox, you're like, oh wait, that shouldn't have happened, that's weird. But it doesn't really count because you enjoyed it in theaters at the moment it happened. A lot of these are things that I noticed in theaters, and they actually hampered my enjoyment while I was watching the movie the first time, and especially the other times I watched it. And I feel as if plot holes being there really show that there's not a lot of love put into the world. They don't really care about the world and just want to tell a story, which I don't like. I am one of the biggest fans of world building ever. I always put the most love and care into my worlds when I create them, and I need everything to be consistent and line up perfectly. So when you kind of allow these plot holes that should be story breaking to happen, it's very much saying that you didn't put a lot of thought into this and you just wanted the scenes you think would look cool or be cool on screen. So let's get into some plot holes. We're gonna start with The Force Awakens. Okay, first, how the fuck did the First Order rise to power? I mean, the New Republic was a powerful force at the time. Why did they not stop millions of children being kidnapped from being kidnapped? And how did they not notice that they were buying out all this material to build an entire army, train an army, buy weaponry, and build an entire fucking death planet? Kylo Ren, Sith Lord, almost lost a lightsaber fight to an ex-janitor who had only used the weapon once before in his life. How does Maz have the lightsaber? You told us you'd address this because you knew it didn't make sense, and then you just didn't. And also, why would she not give it to the Resistance? She's a friend of theirs, and she knew they were looking for Luke. You'd think that she would have given that to them a while ago. Not sure why she didn't. In The Last Jedi, a lot of this opens so many just plot holes, or just expands other ones even larger. Let's get into it. So first, the exact premise of the movie. How did the movie even happen? I mean, why didn't they just send some Star Destroyers ahead by going in hyperspace for a second, or get other Star Destroyers from other places in the galaxy to help them out, and to defeat that little Republic fleet? It shouldn't have been that difficult. And the Holdo maneuver.
Fire on that cruiser!
The Holdo maneuver. This not only creates plot holes for The Last Jedi, this creates plot holes for every single Star Wars movie in history. Why couldn't you just put a droid on an X-Wing and send it through hyperspace to any opponent you've ever had in your life? This was destructive. It destroyed an entire fleet with a single ship. And you see the way that it's set up, meaning that it's been a thing in the universe before, or at least they know that it's possible because they started freaking out knowing what was about to happen. So, why doesn't it happen more? How did the map exist? Because Luke was in exile, and the X-Wing was crashed in the ocean. So, why would there be a map somewhere that leads to him? Okay, back to the space battle. Why could none of the smaller ships just hop out of hyperspace, go grab some more fuel and refuel? I don't see why that was like such an impossibility for either the good guys or the bad guys. It seems like it'd be pretty easy and the first thing you think of. Yoda can summon lightning. Yoda can summon lightning. The Force Ghost can physically interact with the world by summoning goddamn lightning. Why is this never used before? Why does Yoda not just lightning the battering ram on Crate? Why does Yoda not just lightning Kylo Ren's ships out of the sky? Why not? It doesn't make sense. Yoda, are you a Sith Lord? How the fuck does Rose catch up to Finn? Finn is so far ahead of her in this scene, just to be hit by her in this scene almost immediately? How does that happen? He's going at full speed to do this. It doesn't make any sense. And how does Finn walk from one end of that battlefield to the other without getting killed? I mean, seriously, these things were going at like upwards of 50 miles an hour and they were getting shot out instantly. How did Finn make it? And the Rise of Skywalker. This is the part I urge you to take a shot. And if that means take a shot of whiskey or just kill yourself, I'm not condoning either, but... And our very first issue starts in the very first second of the movie with the text crawl. Palpatine's back. How? And what really gets me is that they know that it doesn't make sense, because they just have this dude, who I guess is something acting like part of the main crew, say, dark secrets, cloning, things only the Sith knew. What? Yeah, just throw out that vague shit instead of actually trying to think for a second about the world you've created and give us an actual answer. Thanks, JJ. He fell down a massive pit while being shocked to death and then was blown up. How does he survive that? And then we move into the opening sequence. A lot of problems with this. A, light speed skipping isn't possible because you can't be in the gravity well of a planet when you begin a light speed jump. That's why it doesn't happen. Also, how did the TIE fighters track them so quickly? Did they really manage to make something that small and efficient in the span of a year and cheap, because the TIE fighters are supposed to be these super cheap, just run of the mill like, oh yeah, let's... Also, TIE fighters have hyperspace now, cool. Okay. And the worst part of this movie, no, actually not only the movie, the worst part of the sequel trilogy, no, the worst part of the entire Star Wars franchise, no, the worst object in the history of film is this dagger. I'm sorry. I know that's a bit harsh, but this dagger is it's horrible. Let's go through the process of just getting the dagger. First, they had to go to this desert planet because Luke wrote about it once in a book. Then, Lando was luckily out doing his grocery shopping so he could pick them up in his RV. Oh, and also decided to live there for some reason. And he then tells them to go to Lurch Canyon. None of these people know where Lurch Canyon is. But luckily, the stormtroopers are nice enough to help out our heroes by corralling them into the exact 10 by 10 foot sand pit they needed to be in. How considerate. And also, how is the sand just floating in the air? How is it not falling into the cave with them? That doesn't make sense. Why is this sand magic and floating? Oh, and just in case you forgot, Finn is still Rey's little puppy who's gonna scream her name during the sequence too.
Ray, I never told you Ray.
Well, we find the pit with the dagger in it, and C-3PO picks it up and says there are coordinates on this, and that he can't translate them, because when Anakin Skywalker, as a 7-year-old, Anakin was kind enough to program the droid with the Republic Galactic Law, despite being in the Outer Rim, despite being a 7-year-old, and despite... Sorry, I'm getting heated. The dagger just gets to me. And also, I don't understand why C-3PO can say that they're coordinates and where they lead, but without, saying them. I mean, what's the distinction between what you can and can't translate? Because you can translate what it is, but just not what it says? So then what do they have to do? Well, luckily, Poe is the next video game side quest giver that tells them they need to go to this other planet where they can get it code broken or something. And then, fortunately, they find Poe's old friend who knows how to jailbreak droid. They get the coordinates to go to of the Death Star wreckage, they go there, manage to land their ship in the exact right spot, and then walk to the exact right spot so that Rey can do the coolest magic trick ever, pull out the dagger, do this shit, and then have it line up perfectly with the somehow unmoved rubble of the Death Star in this crashing torrent of wave after 34 years. These haven't moved in 34 years with these ocean conditions. What the hell, J.J. Abrams? Do you know how water works? Do you need a crash course, a refresher? Does my man Hank Green need to help you out there? Seriously, I guess I should be grateful that it's intact. I mean, otherwise you might have to skip to a different chapter of J.J. Abrams' goddamn dream journal. And now I'll step back from the dagger and look at more plot holes. The Sith Wayfinder. What? When Rey stabs Kylo and gets the Sith Wayfinder from his ship and flies to Exegol, how does anyone else get there? They say Rey gave them the coordinates, but it was the safety of the path to get there that they needed. And even if she did give it to her Resistance friends, she didn't send it out to the whole galaxy. But somehow all these other ships can fly in. What? How can the CGI cloud of faceless cannon fodder get in, when it wasn't uploaded. There was no signal like given out. I don't understand how they got there without the Sith Wayfinder. The whole movie was founded based on the idea of the Sith Wayfinder being an absolute necessity. And now Palpatine admits that he just wanted Rey to get there. So if Kylo also wanted Rey to get there, why not just tell Kylo to get Rey there? I mean, I feel like that would have been a lot easier if they both had the same plan and, you know, Palpatine can somehow read Kylo's thoughts. And then how does Kylo get there? He doesn't have a ship with lightspeed. We see him take a TIE fighter, but those TIE fighters are from the Empire, somehow completely undamaged in that rubble, but also they don't have lightspeed. There was no way for him to get there that fast at all. And then when we see the Star Destroyers on Testicle, that's ridiculous. Come on. I've counted and have come to the conclusion that there are at minimum 200 Star Destroyers per. At the bare minimum, the smallest Star Destroyers still require 37,000 personnel to run a single one. And even though these Star Destroyers are absolutely massive and no doubt have more than that, we will be so generous to give them that smaller number. And there's at least 200 ships, so that would be 7.4 million crew members. That would mean in the span of 16 years, from the age that they can turn 18, this would mean they would have to be kidnapping 50,000 babies a year, and not only just babies, human babies, because for some reason, none of the stormtroopers are ever shown to be alien, which is probably for like Hitler reasons, but still, why is the New Republic not doing anything about this? And also, how did no one notice this many babies going missing? What? And how did they fully train all these guys? Why did none of them defect? Whatever. Hey, this is Editor Finn here. I'm just kind of looking back on what I just did and the video while I'm working on it, and I realized that I said at least 200 Star Destroyers, but apparently we know that there were actually 1,080, which is over 5 times what I believed there were, and that brings us to a total of 31,900,000 Sith Eternal casualties, which is absolutely insane. But this means that with that many crew members, the Sith would need to be kidnapping actually over 1 million, almost 2 million children for 16 years without any intervention from the Republic, without anyone trying to stop them. For them all to be 18, that is a ridiculous amount. Should never have happened. This is honestly just a pretty inexcusable plot hole just to make something that looks cool. That's it. Editor Finn out. And the undeserved finale. If there's one thing that's worse than undermining moments, it is overmining them. If that's a word. Do you remember how you felt after seeing Endgame? That amazing climax, the beautiful earned moment with the music coming in and just feeling so overwhelmed with these just feelings of, oh my god, we did it. It's been over 10 years in the making. We've had this amazing experience. I've been along the whole time for this awesome journey, and now that I'm looking at its beautiful full conclusion, it is astounding. Well, J.J. Abrams remembers that because he copied it beat for beat. I mean, seriously, the only thing that Rey didn't do was snap her goddamn fingers. It wasn't earned, and the ending felt way too shallow because it was. Compared to Endgame, which has spent over 10 years working and developing this new trilogy has only been going on for like 6 years? It just had that randomly helpful fleet show up, and we were supposed to act like this was people we knew and we felt connected to these characters, but they're just a CGI glob of ships. Endgame worked because we know these characters and we have personal feelings and connections with all of them. But Endgame was different. Endgame was personal. Endgame was better. The Rise of Skywalker tried to do what Endgame did, but it didn't have the potential to. When the music was swelling in and we saw the fleets and we saw Lando's face looking at them and Poe's excited expression, I didn't care. It was so difficult for me to muster any amount of feeling or emotion towards this, but I just sat in the theater thinking, okay, can you win yet? If I were to try to describe imposter syndrome to someone who had never felt it before, I would show them that clip. We don't have an emotional stake in this, they're all just strangers. More just ships being piloted by nobodies. And then down on the ground we have Rey facing against Palpatine. and Palpatine is supposed to be the puppet master, sort of being like, oh, I've been pulling the strings this whole time and I've organized this. But it's not true, because the sequels didn't have a plan, so how could Palpatine? Unlike the MCU, which had Thanos appear in movies separate and started building towards his existence, and it was a well-known thing that eventually he would show up, this was out of left field. This was a complete surprise to everyone, including the writers. So of course it didn't feel like the overcoming of this big bad that had fought against Rey this whole time in the ultimate battle. It felt like, okay, what's the connection here? I mean, Rey and Palpatine had little to no personal feelings towards each other. I mean, Palpatine was like, hey, I'm just gonna have the exact same plot I did with Luke with you. And then Rey was like, you're pretty evil, I'm gonna kill you now. And then Kylo shows up, literally defying all odds and possibility. And then Kylo's supposed to have the scene where he fights the Knights of Ren, and that's supposed to be a really cool thing. But guess who doesn't give a shit about it again? It's us, because the Knights of Ren were never introduced as evil villains at all, except for in this exact moment. So of course, why should we care? And then Rey has the moment of Force-induced schizophrenia where she hears the voices of the other Jedi calling out to her. And this was a moment I was like, this feels like it should be cool, but it wasn't, because this is, despite the Force ghosts we've already seen, it's kind of like, hey, here's as many cameos as we could fit in at the same time. There's all your fan service. Are you happy? Did we do good? Also, not to get back in plot holes, but why does Rey killing Palpatine this time actually mean he's dead? Also, why didn't he just stop shooting lightning? Why does 2 lightsaber do more than 1? What? So in this scene, we see Rey right about to kill Palpatine. However, right before she does, she puts her lightsaber behind her back, and then Ben ends up with it. And, you know, Palpatine's whole thing here was that he needs to die so that Rey would kind of take over and go to the dark side because of it. But when Ben gets the lightsaber, you'll notice here in a few seconds, Rey is going to pull out Leia's lightsaber, and Palpatine backs away and starts having Sith troopers fight. Why? She was still gonna kill him. What was the point in backing away? You just doomed your own plan. And then the Ben-Rey kiss. The kiss between people who have had a very brother and sister dynamic, or at least cousins, with Rey taking the last name Skywalker, and it just makes everyone feel very uncomfortable. That kiss. It feels so forced because there was not an inkling of romantic tension between the two. No romantic tension was ever built up because there was no intention of them being romantic partners. And the fact that they are romantic partners is not only weird for feelings that feel borderline incestuous, but for abuse reasons. Because if a man has spent his entire, last 3 years of his life chasing you down across the galaxy with the sole goal of either killing you or converting you into his religion, you should probably not kiss him. But J.J. Abrams had boy main character and girl main character, so I don't know what to do but make them kiss. Hot makeouts. Why? It was so uncomfortable in theaters. So uncomfortable. I mean, seriously, Kylo has caused the deaths of every single one of Rey's parental figures at this point, has done nothing but try to kill her. I don't understand the idea that there could be any romantic tension between them. It's honestly disgusting and abusive, and I don't want to think about it ever again. And also still incestuous. Ugh. And now the battles. Star Wars is a movie about wars, and in wars, there are battles. This may be a surprise to you, or it may not be. I hope it's not. Let's get into how the prequels and the original trilogy dealt with lightsaber fights, because they are exact opposites. In the original trilogy, the actual lightsaber fight never mattered. The reason for the lightsaber being a close combat weapon was so that they could deliver lines of dialogue to each other and so we could see the emotion being conveyed behind the swings. It is all about the emotional tension behind it and what's happening beyond just the flashy show of spectacle and battling. At least for the lightsaber fights. And then the prequels are on the opposite end of the spectrum. The actual, tension behind the fights kind of stopped mattering when they started fighting. It was more just about kicking ass and looking awesome, which it does with some of the sickest choreography ever, some of the most wild stunts, and just an absolute fun-ass time to sit back and watch in theaters. Well, at home I was, 3 when that movie came out. All you have to do is look at this.
Well, you have controlled your fear. Now, release your anger. Only your hatred can destroy me.
Versus this. And I bet you fucking enjoyed both of these, for very different reasons. I mean, one was like, plot's a little iffy, but god, this is a good time to watch. And the other one, you're on the edge of your seat like, oh my gosh, that's Vader and Luke. Oh my gosh, they're giving lines to each other. Oh my gosh, is that hints at redemption? And the new trilogy doesn't commit to either of these, having this weird hybrid of the worst choreography you could have had and just no emotion behind the lightsaber fighting. Absolutely none. Like, for the love of God, stop using slow-mo in lightsaber fights. Stop using slow-mo anywhere, please. So there's really three kinds of battles in Star Wars that I want to get into. There's lightsaber battles, there's space battles, and there's chase scenes, because those seem to be like the Illuminati pyramid here of what defines a good Star Wars battle. Battles don't have to be flashy scenes where you're just showing off how much you paid off your VFX team and showing how much cool stuff you can do and what you can make happen in space. But space battles sure are, and they're fucking awesome. When a large-scale space battle is done right, it can be an exhilarating experience where you are glued to the screen the whole time, wondering what maneuvers it can make, what it's gonna do, how it's gonna deal with the oncoming ships. And when done wrong, it can leave you scratching your head at what just happened, because there's so much on the screen it can be hard to really show what you're trying to display. And so I think we should start off by looking at one of my favorite space battles in Star Wars, the Battle of Coruscant at the beginning of The Revenge of the Sith. I think this battle is amazing. It's thrilling, it's got an amazing experience, and for the first time in prequel history, the dialogue doesn't hurt the scene. It's just fun quips between Obi and Anakin that doesn't feel horrifically forced like normal. And it manages to keep it clear what's happening at all times, despite how much is happening on the screen. You will always know what Anakin's up to, what Obi-Wan's up to, what threats they're currently facing, and what's going on. And they also keep it new and exciting with things like vulture droids coming out, different kinds of Sith cruisers, those little battery bugs that get on Obi-Wan's ship. I mean, they keep it fun and fresh. It frequently shows us the scale of the fight and really what we're getting into. And then we have the fight against the Dreadnought at the beginning of The Last Jedi, which admittedly starts out super fun and cool with Poe's funny lines of dialogue and Poe kicking ass with those turrets, and we see some really cool stuff on the individual scale, but when they take a step back to introduce the bombers, it all goes to shit. The basic premise of the battle is that the TIE fighters need to stop the B-Wing bombers from reaching the Dreadnought, and the smaller ships on the Rebel team are trying to prevent this by taking out as many TIE fighters as possible. This concept seems like it would be easy to approach, but it's not partially because the B-Wings. This is another plot hole section. Welcome to Plot Holes 2 Electric Boogaloo. Okay, let's look at every problem with the B-Wing bomber design. Okay, A, it moves at a snail's pace in space where weight doesn't matter. Why is it moving so slow? There should be a way to make that thing faster. The unload distance for the payload is tiny. Also, it uses gravity to make it fall out of the thing. Why does it use gravity? You're in space. And not only all of this, but the effective range of the blast always kills the B-Wing if it's on point to hit the target. There's no way to survive this. And then when the canopy bay doors open to let the bombs out, it opens into the rest of the ship. Everyone on the ship should be instantly dead. They should be killed by the vacuum of space sucking them out. But it doesn't happen for some reason. Not sure why. And we can't really tell what's going on screen because at one point there's over like a dozen ships, and then one of the captains goes, destroy the last bomber. And we're like, there's one last bomber now? Don't know when that happened, but that's cool. And also, all of those ones were eliminated in the span of like 30 seconds, so I don't see why now every single TIE fighter is too incompetent to take out a single ship. I genuinely couldn't tell what was happening half the time because bullets came out of nowhere, and the B-Wing bomber was still moving at a fucking snail's pace. And I don't know how that bomber survived for so long when all the others got instantly wrecked. That was kind of just the general space battles overview in general, but now I want to look at chases, because there are a lot of chases in Star Wars. I mean, like, that's like half the battles. We're going to be comparing two. From The Rise of Skywalker, we'll use the sand chase scene, and from The Empire Strikes Back, we'll be using the speeder chase scene through the Forest of Endor. The Forest Moon of Endor has a pretty easy concept. Han messed up trying to ambush some of the scout troopers, so Luke and Leia have to stop any of the scout troopers from alerting the rest and getting more help. I mean, despite some admittedly horrible CGI, but that's just because of the time it was made in, it's a blast to sit through. A lot of the tension from the scout trooper fight comes just from the environmental hazards. You see scenes where Luke has to push up against another stormtrooper while they head towards a tree that they might hit. And with the exception of the one that Luke lightsabered down, all of the stormtroopers are taken out by environmental hazards, and it's very cool to see how the environment is used to manipulate the scene. Also, dialogue is very limited other than what the characters need to know. And those characters sort of, like Luke and Leia, they sort of just know what the other one's thinking. And the moments we do get of dialogue are just sort of more George Lucas being annoying. So yeah, that kind of sucks, but it's forgivable. And then if we look at the sand speeder chase, it does not do these things, and it falls completely short. First off, the dialogue is atrocious. It is so cringe-inducing and does not feel like things people should naturally say. It's just all one-liners and quips that get so annoying.
They fly now! They fly now! They fly now!
And the environment doesn't matter at all. Even the sand that's being kicked up and should be blocking off the stormtroopers to provide some sort of environmental thrill doesn't do anything to them, and they just keep going through it like nothing happened. It doesn't affect the plot in any way. And yeah, that one was more just kind of a quick rant on those different types of fights and how they kind of fell short. But now for the battles that we've all been waiting for, the big emotional lightsaber battles. The fights don't really matter as much as the emotion behind them. Lightsaber fights are supposed to be up close, personal, and meaningful. So I'll be comparing the Return of the Jedi lightsaber battle with Vader and Luke to Rey and Kylo's lightsaber battle in the Rise of Skywalker, because they serve the same narrative purpose. They're supposed to be the good guy fighting the bad guy, but trying to bring them to the good side. However, this falls flat on its face because Rey isn't doing that. Now, let's look at Return of the Jedi. There is almost no music in these scenes. It's hardly scored because most of the tension is derived just from the characters' experiences with each other and how slow and methodical the fight is. There's only a few lightsaber clashes before they split off and begin giving more dialogue, and Luke tries to persuade Vader to join the dark side. Palpatine tries to persuade Luke to join the dark side, and Vader does the same thing, and Vader's sort of in the middle of this conflict. Did I say Luke tries to join the dark side? And at the end, what redeems him is when Luke looks at his metal arm and looks at Vader's metal arm and puts together that that's his father, and he should try to redeem him still. So he doesn't kill him, and he stays on the light side. And then Vader manages to redeem himself by taking his son's kindness and seeing what's possible and throwing Palpatine down the pit, killing him because he was dead. There's no way he's back. And then with Rey and Kylo, it's not the same because Rey doesn't really care. She's trying to get through Kylo and steal his ship. So she just kind of stabs him and leaves him for dead. And then Kylo's like, holy shit, that cured me. I don't know, like, if there was like an evil bug that was right there in his chest, so when he got stabbed, it got rid of it, but that was so weird. It didn't match at all. And let's look at the choreography. The Return of the Jedi choreography can be off and a bit weird in some places, but it's just weird, it's not bad. And the lightsaber fights are very just quick and sort of jabs at each other and then backing up and parrying, like sort of more realistic fighting. And then you have this from The Rise of Skywalker. What is it with the backhand stuff that they love so much? And also, if you notice, I mentioned music in Return of the Jedi and the lack of it. However, this one uses an unoriginal, same retired score, which could work in a lot of instances, but not this one because it sounds like a regular battle theme. It just sounds like something that would happen if Rey was kicking Stormtrooper ass. It doesn't match the theme. It seems more just like Rey's fighting in an everyday average battle instead of Kylo Ren and trying to bring him to redemption. The music doesn't match the scene in any way at all. So Finn, this was supposed to be a retrospective, but you've only shat on these movies for about 30 minutes now, and this is my chance to tell you the good in the movies, what I enjoyed, what I think they did right, and keep in mind these are my personal opinions. If you disagree, feel free to leave a comment so I can boost my algorithm. For one, VFX work and visuals are top-notch here, especially in The Last Jedi. That is the most beautiful movie ever turned out of Star Wars. The things that you see in there are beautiful. There's so much contrast between what's happening in the background and the foreground. You always can tell where each character is. It's beautiful. The Holdo maneuver scene is absolutely stunning. The Battle of Crate, one of the most beautiful Star Wars battles ever, but it's not consistent because when JJ directs in The Rise of Skywalker, all of the scenes are just so gray and muddled and dark and you can hardly tell what's happening. It's really atrocious to the eyes and kind of insulting. And I know this is supposed to be the good section, but most of my praise goes to Rian Johnson's work in The Last Jedi here. I think it was nice to have Rey coming from a nowhere family. I think that was a really good lesson until it was turned back on. I really did appreciate Hermit Luke. I think that was a great move for him. It just could have been set up a bit better. Hermit Luke could really function, just not as the cause of Kylo Ren. I also think it did great at setting up the universe, like in The Force Awakens, and asking so many questions and leaving the readers and leaving the viewer's mind with so many like, oh my gosh, who's that? What's this? Where are they? What can happen next? It was really a moment where you were like, anything can happen with the Star Wars universe. There's so much excitement right now. Even though that kind of died off as the movies went on and it went very weird directions. And I guess the use of the Force Ghost was pretty nice in Rise of Skywalker, a nice homage to who's been Jedi throughout the runtime of Star Wars. The dialogue is sometimes really cringy and one-linery, but for the most part it is far more realistic than anything George Lucas has ever put out, so I give him that. There is some really amazing acting in here. I mean, really, John Boyega, Adam Driver, Daisy Ridley, they gave it their all, and I'd like to be so clear in nailing home the fact that I don't have anything against Daisy Ridley or any of these actors. They followed what they were told to do, and they are amazing, talented actors, and I hope they go on to just do great things. I love seeing Daisy Ridley on screen. I'd just like her to be in better movies. And John Boyega has become one of my favorite actors of all time. I love his Twitter presence. I love his screen presence. He's just a great guy all around. And I think something it really nailed was, or tried to nail, was the themes of growing, change, and adjusting to the times. It's a trilogy about moving on. And once the last movie ended, it was telling us it's time to move on from this. It's time to go about our lives and, you know, just realize that, hey, no matter where we came from, we can be whoever we want. We can make our own destiny, and we don't have to worry about who we're related to, who we're not related to, what paths we think are set out for us, what paths others set out for us. We can be who we want to be. And I think that was a good lesson. I really wish it was conveyed better. And yeah, here is the end of my script. Yeah, for the overview, I didn't really write anything. I just wanted to put my ranty thoughts here and say, it was a trilogy. It had to do the impossible. It had to live up to the hype that was surrounding it, which was an impossible feat. This thing would have had to stop COVID from existing to make it what people expected of it. And that sucks for them. You know, I really wish that they didn't have this high bar set for themselves, because you can see that pressure from studios and executives and different contrasting ideas really affected these films. And I think this should be a lesson to all other writers of books, movies, to plan out a bit more and kind of take a second to lay out what you want to do before you just go at it guns blazing. Because even though it works for some people like George Lucas in the original trilogy, it's better, especially on a team like that, to put it all down and have a plan to go at it. I think that the sequel trilogy had a lot of potential, more potential than any series in history, and they kind of blew it. And I think that really sucks because I want to enjoy these movies. I want to get thrill out of these movies. And I hope that with time I look at them through the same nostalgia glasses that I look at the prequels through, and I can sit down and genuinely enjoy them. But for now, that's just not something that I can do. And if you can, I applaud you for it. And I'm glad that you're keeping the spirit of Star Wars alive while people like me sit in front of cameras and shit on it. So good on you. And yeah, that's it. I'll see you around. Hello, if you are seeing this, you are probably some of my favorite people on Earth now. Seriously, thank you for watching this long, and thanks for finding this little Easter egg. It means so much that you stayed and watched. It was hours of editing, on hours of script writing, on hours of recording. It was the biggest undertaking I've ever even attempted to do. And I got it done, and I feel so just accomplished. So the fact that you're here paying attention to it really helps make me feel amazing. And I hope that you have an amazing 2021. Thank you.